Hello, hello, hello. Hope everybody's having a fantastic week. I've just got off the phone to a Mr. David Woods Bartley, another amazing guest that we've had here on Leading Our Own Way. He's had his fair share of successes and setbacks. You know, he has been battling long-term effects of childhood sexual trauma and life-threatening mental illness. In August 31st, 2011, he went to jump off the fourth tallest bridge just outside Sacramento in California, USA. He's had to fight long-term clinical depression, which led him to the suicide attempt. He has been recognized for doing 2 TED Talks. You can see the picture behind me. He's done over 800 presentations all around the world, ranging from India, Japan, Korea, so many more. He has done talks at Boston universities, worked with Stutter Health, US Army, NASA. Just this guy is, if there's a definition of leading your own way, David is it. However, he shows, and he's vulnerable in our chat, and he suffered with a little bit, far from a little bit, but deep depression just only 8 months ago. And he talks to us deeply about the strategies that he's using to combat that. He's got so many wonderful people around him. I don't think he honestly sees the wonderfulness in his soul. He can't look at himself, and I think he really needs to start, because when I look at him, I only see this amazing person. You know, he you don't get recognized as being named as the 2021 mental health champion by the prestigious Steinberg Institute, and being recognized as a global thought leader. David, great chat, great guy, so vulnerable. He's awesome. He's become a good friend of mine. I want you to go and meet David, listen to his episodes, listen to our conversation on Leading Our Own Way. It's powerful, and you will know somebody in your life that is going through it, right? And is thinking about suicide. This is the episode for you. Subscribe, follow, tune in to David Woods Bartley. Welcome to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and this is the podcast that unveils captivating narratives of resilience and personal triumph. This podcast is for anyone seeking inspiration and insights on overcoming life's challenges. Follow and subscribe, and then we can lead together forever. Guys, just quickly before you do go and see David, I have to kind of stop. And I have to kind of apologize as well. I've recently learned something about language, especially when it comes to the subject of somebody ending their life. I've filmed quite a few episodes where we discuss suicide, and close to another guest of another episode that will be coming out later this year. We've had discussions around language being used in the world, especially when it comes to suicide. And you know, I'm constantly learning, and this person taught me valuable lessons. I'm vulnerable. I'm always learning. That's partly why I wanted to create the podcast, was to meet amazing people who had changed their lives for the better, and for you guys to see them too, and to understand that there's something we can always do. You know, there's something we can always work on to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve in life. And so, yeah, I'm going to show a pitch up on the screen, but I use the terms committed suicide a few times in this episode, and I did in the other episode. And a person close to one of the guests, who I'm also know as well, spoke to me about it. And she taught me something, and I now look at it and go, I actually cringe when I hear it. So I can't. Yeah. So if you do hear those words, and you use them too, because of we're programmed, or we're just used to other people saying it, and so we take it on as normality, and it's okay. But when you break it down, things do change over time. So I'm just going to read it to you. I'm going to put it on the screen so you can see it. Anyway, so I've always used the word committed suicide, and what the language guidelines that you'll be able to see is suggest that we should say die by suicide, death by suicide or lost their life to suicide. And it gives a reason why, and I'll read it out to you for those who are not watching and listening on Apple Podcasts. But it's commit really implies suicide is a sin or crime, reinforcing the stigma that it's a selfish act and personal choice. So using the neutral phrasing like die by suicide helps strip away the shame or blame element aspects to it. So now I have that mindset and that understanding and that learning from that individual. When I hear myself say it, I cringe that I'm saying it. Now, it doesn't mean I cringe when I hear other people say it, because I'm fully aware of their understanding around it, because I was there. So, but I want to put that message out to that person gave to me too. So it's something we can learn and moving forward as well. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you before we did start the episode. And I'm going to do this on any other episodes that I may have said it. And I know that other episode I'll be doing it on too later down the track will be coming out in a few months' time. Anyway, thanks for listening and pausing, because I think it's just a valuable lesson that we all just got to look at, right? So thank you to that person and to everybody that's going to be maybe thinking about that language use for the future. Anyway, I hope you get a lot from this episode once again. See you soon. Mr. David Woods Bartley, how are you today, brother?
You know what, brother? I am great. So incredibly excited to be here with you, brother.
Thanks for joining me on Leading Our Own Way. I'm so excited to have you. We've been in contact for a little while now, and I'm so grateful that you reached out to me. I absolutely saw your story and had to get you on the show. And mate, you're amazing. And just a beam of light. Look at that face, smiling away if you're not watching on YouTube. This is fantastic. Tell us a little bit about yourself, David.
So, I'm the 12th of 13 children. I'm going to kind of throw that out there. But there's a story behind that. But actually, so I live in Northern California, outside of Sacramento, and I'm engaged to really, quite frankly, the most beautiful woman in the world. And I've never been a dad before, and now I have the opportunity to be a dad because I have 3 beautiful children who live with me, Bella, Ethan, and Grace. And the 5 of us are together with 2 dogs. One is to my left, down low. There's Lexi the pug. And then I'm looking across the room right now, and I see Percy, who is a beautiful, the golden retriever, but imagine all white. So they call him an English cream. Yeah. And I live in this beautiful home with these beautiful people. And what I get to do is to travel pretty extensively and to share my story. And my story is one that when people say, well, hey, what do you do? I say, well, I share my story from mental hellness to mental wellness. And it's an interesting tale. And I'm sure that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But I am so blessed to be here with you tonight, brother, and to share different parts of it, because I'm surrounded by amazing people, not just the people that I live with, but my family, the professionals that I go to for support, friends that I have. And I think it's incumbent upon me to give back. I need to try to channel some of all this goodness that's directed at me on an everyday basis. I need to channel this out into the world that I think is hungry for it.
Yeah. You know what, David, I'm so glad you started there, because that really paints a picture for the viewers of the light that you're currently living in, that's brought you from the darkness that you have been through since being a child. And it will come to light to people of what that means. But before we go there, what is it you actually do on a daily basis? Then what do you do for a living? How are you mentally, and how are you physically, and how are you emotionally, and how are you professionally? But I suppose the best way to ask it is, how are you leading your own way?
So it is. I'm a structure guy. Like in front of me, you can't see right now. There was a to-do list for today, and I have one of the old-fashioned fold-out calendars because I need to be able to see stuff that's down.
Notepad.
So yeah, there you go. And I was raised in an environment by my beloved mother Suzanne, who really preached, but not like in your face, but it was more she championed, that's a much better verb to use, this whole person care concept of body, mind, and spirit. So my day begins with care of self. So I have been taught and I have been guided to put, Andy, my self-care on a pedestal. Like, it is the most important thing. Because at first I thought that was selfish, but then like, no, you can't give from an empty well. You just can't do that. So for me, it's diet, it's sleep, it's exercise, it's time outside. I know we'll talk about it, but I take psychotic medications. I see a therapist on a regular basis. I do some other therapy that's really quite extraordinary that I'd love to talk about a little bit later. And then I'm constantly looking to expand and improve my mind. And then I have my own spiritual pursuits as well. And that's outlines my day. And then my work is going to various places. Like, this coming week, I'm going to Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, and I'm going to keynote a speech that I call The Why of Suicide and the How of Hope. And then I'm going to be there for a day, and then I'm going to take a plane, and I'm going to go to Louisiana, New Orleans, and I'm going to speak to a group of soldiers in the Army and give them a little bit a different version of that same talk, and then come back home and then get ready for my next trip. And it's about going out and offering, I just want to offer a different perspective. That's really what I'm looking to do. I'm not saying that's I'm not saying that all the great work in suicide prevention and mental health education, everything, it's phenomenal. It's amazing. I just want to make it a little bit more doable. I think it's a little complicated.
Yeah. And I mean, who better to come from than somebody who's lived that personally themselves, right?
They put me in the category, brother. They say I'm somebody with lived experience. And like, okay, yeah, I am. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I think with depression in particular, which was the illness that led me to the suicide attempt, and it's the illness that I still have to very actively manage on an everyday basis, like every day. Unless you have actually been depressed, you really don't know what it's like. And it's interesting. I think, a lot of times it's just as important for us in trying to understand something to know what something isn't that helps us to know what it is. So I'm blessed to work with children a lot, talking about emotions and feelings and things of that nature. And so I was working with a group, you'll love this. I was working with a group of second graders. And I had this intuitive thought. And I didn't, it was like, okay, well, the thought was ask this question. And the question was to ask the second graders, hey, do you guys think, is there a difference between sadness and depression? And they looked at me, Andy, like I was an idiot. Like, of course there is. But you think like in the adult world, people assume, people think, oh, well, I've been sad, so I know what it's like to be depressed. Like, no, you don't. No. So they were emphatic about the fact that, yes, there's a difference. And I said, okay, well, tell me what the difference is. Don't just leave me hanging. So a little boy in the front row, he's waving his arm like this. And I said, all right, brother, lay it on me. And here's what he said. When you're sad, you know why. When you're depressed, you don't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
And then there's Chef David Chang, famous chef, and he fights bipolar. And the component of bipolar, of course, is depression. And here's what he says about depression. When you're depressed, you're convinced that everything you think is true.
Yeah.
I mean, you put those two things together, and it's just like, wow. So people aren't out of their mind. They're on a strand of thought that has been influenced by all kinds of things that are so debilitating, and you don't talk about them, so you keep them inside. And thus Maya Angelou, who says there's no greater agony than bearing the weight of an untold story.
Yeah.
All those people. And then you become convinced of all this stuff that it's not true, but you believe it to be true. And the key word there for me is belief.
Yeah.
Belief is powerful. So not quite sure how we got down that lane,
No,
but
it's fascinating because my question, I will answer the question around the audiences in a minute, but back to the grade 2 boy, sadness versus depression. That's the same for pleasure and happiness. We've substituted, I feel like in the modern society, we've substituted happiness for pleasure. Pleasure being short term, so dopamine, and happiness being long term, serotonin.
I never thought about that. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
I think so. I read it somewhere and it makes
I'm gonna give
sense.
you credit for it, though.
Say again.
I'm gonna give you credit for it.
Oh, no, you can't do that. Get into trouble for that. But if you think about it, everything we do is we're looking for quick hits, quick dopamine hits. But
Right.
really, no one's satisfied. No one enjoys the moment, and it's very hard for people to understand their purpose. You clearly understand your purpose now. You clearly enjoy it, and you get satisfaction from it on a daily basis. But going back to the audience, because I do want to stay on. I want to go back towards a little bit more detail about how you set yourself up for the day in a moment, because I think that's important for the viewers to take away who might be able to connect to your story on a deep level. But your audience, you mentioned grade 2s, you've mentioned the soldiers, and I've obviously seen pictures online regarding the police forces and things like that. Who do you tend to, because you speak a lot. I'm actually going to go off side note again. I'm going to bring a picture up. You do a few professional talks, don't you? This is what you do for a living. You've obviously done a couple of TED Talks, TEDx talks, and you've done over, what's the figure? I know it, but I want you to share the number of chats that you've done so far and what you do.
It's over 850.
Wow.
I
love this photo.
Isn't that a great photo? I love that. Photo. Well, and for me, as a speaker, that's like mountaintop, and I don't know how the heck I got to do two. It was, and I think the second one is much better than the first one.
Well, the third one will be better than the second one. So talk us about the audiences, the type of audiences that you present to then.
So it's been if you look at the last 3 years, the majority has been the military. That's been the majority, which has been good because of the crisis of suicide that we have in the military. Second has been schools, all the way from kindergarten, all the way up to postgraduate. Now, obviously, K through about 4th grade, it's a very different talk.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, but get into 4th through 6th, and I don't know how that translates into what its form, right? In Australia,
in England we use forms, but in Australia we were the same as you. We use grades.
Oh, okay. So the 4th through 6th, it's a little bit more intense, and once I get past 6th grade, they get the same talk soldiers get, because you look at the number, they can handle it. They need it.
The numbers of teenage suicides has gone up, hasn't it?
Oh, it's just, Andy, it is just like, it is. Oh,
why do you think
all
that
suicides
is?
are bad.
Of course, but why do you think it is for the young ones?
Well, I think I'm 61. I think what depression will do to you, and I'm using depression as not everybody who kills themselves, let's just call it what it is depressed. The vast majority are. So I'm gonna speak from what I know. What depression will do to you, and it's based on what Chef Chang talks about, is put you into isolation. As human beings, we need some me time. We need a little solo time. We do not. We never need to be isolated. We don't. So my platform is, okay, if isolation is the killer, and I think if nothing else, it contributes to it. There's a lot part, but everything, Andy, that's going bad is exacerbated in isolation. It's just like taken to like a 10 times level. So that's why, you look again at what Maya Angelou said, there's no greater agony. And just think about what she said. There's no greater agony than bearing the weight of an untold story. So you're carrying this around. So now, then you have depression has had you come to believe all this BS, And so now you have sequestered, you've moved yourself into isolation. Everything's just hundreds times worse. And then there's nothing. So the opposite of that then, the opposite of isolation is connection. So connection for me connection is not the cure-all. It's what happens from connection, I think. And there's no initials past my name. I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
But I use Brene Brown's definition of connection, in which she says, I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. When they can give and receive without judgment, and they derive strength and sustenance from the relationship. Brother, every time that I've been with you, I feel seen, heard, and valued. So when any of us feel that, when any of us are connected, it is impossible not to feel the greatest suicide prevention weapon of all time, hope. And you know what the definition of hope is? Literally, the feeling, love that, this is right out of the dictionary. It's not a quote. The feeling that what is wanted can be had. In other words, you are in a world of possibility. So my belief is somebody like me, connected with my brother, thus feeling hopeful, I'm safe. I'm not going to kill myself in that moment. So long-winded answer to your question, and thank you for being so patient with me, is the young ones who are killing themselves are isolated, disconnected, and feeling hopeless. That is a prescription for death right there. Yeah, and wow. there is, and I'm very passionate about what I teach, which is ways. So my thing is connection creates hope, and hope saves lives. So I define connection, Brene Brown. I define hope, okay, because I want it to be tangible. I don't just be like, oh, it's so cute. No, this is like real. Like I know I got this in my hand. So the question becomes then, how do you create connection? So, and we don't need to go into this now, but I talk about 3 ways that you can do. Andy, you can do it every single day, no matter where you go. You and I talked about this. You do it every single, and it's so simple that people think, well, it can't be that easy. I'm like, actually, it is. Is it perfect? No. Is it a solution? I don't talk about solutions. Yeah. I'm talking about just an alternative response. That's all I'm offering. Like, hey, please consider this. That's it.
Yeah, we need to get into that for sure.
It's fun. I love it. And you know, brother, it is astonishing to me. I mean, I watched it play out today. I had got to get my hip replaced, and I went to physical therapy and met my physical therapist, Trisha, and she has a student, Adelina. And when I talk to people, I like to use their name and just, and then, share. I like to share about, I don't want to just like, oh, this is who I am. But just, it was astonishing to me by the end of like an hour and a half, like the connection that had been created. But it can be as simple as, and try this next time you go to a restaurant and the server comes over. So I've noticed lately, a lot of times servers don't even mention their name. It's not like every time. So just find out their name. And then every time the server comes back to the table, use their name.
Absolutely.
See what happens. It's so great. It's amazing.
When I see people's name badges, I actually just use it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. My daughter.
It makes them connect to you instantly.
Dale Carnegie, wrote a famous book called How to Win Friends and Influence People back in probably the 50s. Has this great quote about names. He has a whole course on how to remember names. To a person, the sound of that person's name is the sweetest sound in any language.
Yeah, wow.
Now, is that true for everybody? No.
It's funny.
I love, and I'll tell you a quick story. So there was a guy at the gym, and His name is Michael. And we see each other on a regular basis, but I had never like gone up and said, hey, I see you every day. You know, my name's David. It's Michael. And so, you know, he's not like there's other people that there's more engagement. But with Michael, it's not. It's not like he's mean or anything, but it's just so we were leaving the other day, and I said, hey, Michael, have a great day. And he said, hey, David, great to see you. You have a great day, too. I could not believe he remembered my name. I was blown away. I'll tell you what, I felt so good. It was incredible. Yeah. I'm like, wow, this stuff really does work.
Of course it does. Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Completely. It's so you know what? For anyone who's just tuning in, and I know we're going to go into it, but if you were going to label and categorize this episode of the Leading Our Own Way today, you've obviously already mentioned the suicide attempt. Mm-hmm. Tell us in a one-liner, what was the reason for the suicide attempt?
Because I was raped on repeated occasions by a Boy Scout leader when I was 12 years old.
And you talk about this a hell of a lot. I said to you in the pre-chat, I would never really do too much research on the guest because I want my reactions to be authentic. But I cheated and I did go and watch your videos, and it was just. And obviously, we've spoken about it as well briefly. But oh man, that is some dark stuff, man. And I just, for those who are watching you and can hear it in your voice and see it on your face, where you're at now, that in itself, people will find powerful and inspirational. Like, fuck, I just, yeah. And there's other angles on it too, right? Which we're going to go into. Even you faced a little bit of depression not too long ago as well, didn't you? And I know we're going to get into that as well a little bit.
Yeah, it wasn't a little bit of depression; it was like a lot of depression.
Yeah, like I suppose I use that word because that adjective. Yeah. Sorry, I think I use that adjective because in my mind that probably wasn't. And correct me if I'm wrong, but nowhere near as big as the suicide attempt and the scenario of being raped, I suppose.
That's a great question.
If you get where I'm coming from in my mind.
I totally. Well, so the only thing that I would say that potentially it was as bad or worse was that I literally, there's a 2 to 3 month period that I have no memory of. And all I can think of when we talk about this, when we talk about the therapy that I got into, I think a big part of it was repressed memory, because it was and I only know from my beloved and my eldest brother, who's really my dad, because our father died. Actually birth-wise, I'm the youngest of 4. My 3 older brothers, who I adore, are 6, 9, and 11 years older than I. And really, at the time, Andy, our father died. My eldest brother became my dad. He is so my father. I mean, at 61, he is. Well, he and my beloved, they're my 2 North Stars. So yeah. They're the ones. I mean, and the other 2 are amazing. I mean, I just saw the other one last night, 2 nights ago. Anyway, but yeah, I mean,
you've brought up your childhood. I think that's probably the perfect timing to go there. You relatively had a good childhood until the trauma hit. You've mentioned your brothers. At what age did your father die?
He was, believe it or not, Andy, he was just 42.
He was 42. How old were you?
I was just 7.
Wow.
So I don't have, I mean, I have almost no memory of my dad. I have this great picture of my father, which I love. It's he walking me to my first day of kindergarten. But interesting, it's very, very important to mention my father, and I learned this from my brothers and my mom, was terribly depressed like me. Like he lived with it. And he went, back then they called them sanitariums, but today we'd call them psych hospitals. Like my brothers have memories of going to visit my father in the sanitarium, and there were people, the staff there all wore white, and it was like One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, and and they brought out my brother and I were just talking about this the other day, brought out our dad, and my brother said, "That's not our father," because I guess he was like a zombie. So who knows what they were doing? And this is back in the '60s. So, and it's important to mention because I was in the gene, the heredity. What's the word I'm looking for? I inherited that genetic, and my grandfather killed himself. So that's like boom right here. But if you look at my three beloved brothers, there's no depression at all. So what I explain to people is I had like my genes were like dry tinder for a campfire, and the rape came, just like exploded. That was it.
Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.